She looked me dead in the eye and said it without blinking, without flinching, without a hint of hesitation. "You're not invited to your father's birthday party." I stood frozen in my parents' foyer, holding a bottle of red wine and a folder filled with trip plans I'd been perfecting for 2 years. And that was how Linda, my stepmother, chose to end my illusion of family unity. No warning, no explanation, just a line sharp enough to slice bone. I blinked. Once, twice. I thought maybe she was joking. Maybe this was one of her awkward attempts at sarcasm. But then she smiled, that thin-lipped, polished smile she reserved for cutting people without raising her voice. "Blake and I already agreed," she added calmly, motioning toward the living room where my brother sat silent, eyes cast down like a kid caught stealing. The air left my lungs. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. It was like someone had reached inside my chest and pulled something loose. 2 years of planning, $58,000 saved from skipped vacations, side consulting jobs and quiet dinners alone. All to give my dad, Richard Hayes, the one gift he'd ever mentioned wanting for himself. A trip to the Berkshires, to the farm where he was born, the land his grandfather once plowed. I wanted him to walk the same hills again, touch the old trees, see what remained of the home he left at 16. And now, according to my own family, I wasn't even welcome. They had made the decision, without me. I should have seen it coming. The signs were all there. Missed phone calls, ignored texts, sudden schedule conflicts when I tried to finalize plans. That eerie quiet every time I brought up the trip. But you never expect betrayal to come from people who are supposed to love you. I'm Jessica Hayes. I'm 29 years old, and I've always been a daddy's girl. No matter where I lived, Portland, Chicago, Austin, my father was my anchor, my constant, my call on Sunday, no matter what. He wasn't perfect, but he was good. He taught me how to change a flat, how to check my oil, how to spot a lie, even if I forgot to use that last one when it came to my own family. Growing up in Chapel Hill, I always felt misplaced, like I was the puzzle piece that didn't quite belong. After my mom died, Dad remarried Linda, and somehow Blake became the golden child overnight. Linda made sure of that. She was never overtly cruel. No slamming doors or screaming fits. Just the slow, steady erosion of being left out, brushed off, ignored. The kind of treatment that makes you second-guess your own presence in a room. Still, I stayed connected to my father. Every birthday, every holiday, every emergency, I was there. So when he turned 60, I wanted to give him something real. Not a gift card, not another necktie, but roots. I spent months digging through county records, locating the property line where his childhood home once stood. I called every inn in Lenox until I found one run by a woman who knew his uncle. I arranged meetings with distant cousins who still lived in the area. I wanted him to know where he came from, and that he mattered, but now standing in the same entryway where I once learned to tie my shoes, I'm being told I no longer belong. Not to the party, not to the planning, not even to the story. "I think it's best if you take a step back," Linda said, folding her arms across her crisp blouse, like she was dismissing an employee. My father was nowhere in sight. I glanced toward the hallway, expecting him to appear and tell me it was all a mistake. But he wasn't home. Or maybe he didn't even know what they'd done. I looked at Blake, silently begging him to speak, to say this was wrong, that he didn't agree. He didn't. He just sipped his soda and avoided my eyes. And that's when I knew. This wasn't an oversight. This was a coup. "You've made this all about you, Jess." Linda continued, her tone syrupy and cold. "This trip, it's not what your father wants. He's too old for cross-country nonsense. Too old. The man hikes the Blue Ridge trails every other weekend. He bikes to campus. He teaches full-time as a mechanical engineering professor." But none of that mattered. They had decided he needed something simpler, like a backyard barbecue, with catered sliders and store-bought cupcakes. "Let me talk to him," I said quietly. Linda raised a brow. "He's busy. Golf league." I knew she was lying. My dad never went anywhere without his phone, especially not after his heart scare last year. He kept it clipped to his belt like it was life support. I pulled out my phone and called him anyway. No answer. Straight to voicemail. My stomach sank. They had shut me out completely. And in that moment, standing in the doorway of the house that raised me, I realized something gutting. I wasn't just uninvited from a party. I had been written out of my own family. But they underestimated one thing. I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. My father always said I was the first person to make him cry in public, and the only one he was ever proud to admit it to. It happened at my college graduation. He stood in the front row in his best navy suit, eyes glassy as I crossed the stage. When the announcer read my name, Jessica Lynn Hayes, summa cum laude, he clapped so hard he bruised his palms. But Linda didn't clap, not really. She smiled for the pictures. She posed with practiced grace. But later that night, as we sat around a restaurant table with champagne flutes and laughter, she leaned in and whispered, "You know Blake got into Yale Law with honors too." That's always how it was. Every win I had was weighed against Blake's shadow. No matter what I did, he had already done something shinier, louder, more impressive. He was the family favorite, the pride, the heir. And I was the girl with good intentions and inconvenient timing. After our mom passed when I was 7, Dad fell apart briefly. Then came Linda, polished, poised, always 5 steps ahead of everyone in the room. She brought order, structure, and Blake. I used to think she saved our family. Now I wonder if she just rearranged it to suit her vision. Growing up, holidays were staged productions. Matching outfits, monogrammed napkins, photo sessions with a natural smile, or we'd redo it 10 times. And every photo said the same thing. Linda, with her hand on Blake's shoulder, both glowing like they belonged to each other. Dad somewhere off to the side, caught mid-blink. Me, sometimes cropped out entirely. But despite the imbalance, Dad and I built our own rhythm. He packed my lunches with post-it notes, walked me to school long after I was old enough to go alone, stayed up to help me reformat college essays because he liked the way my brain worked. When he turned 59, something shifted in me. Maybe it was the way he flinched slightly when I asked how retirement planning was going. Maybe it was watching him slow down for the first time. Or maybe it was realizing that time doesn't pause. Not even for the people we love. So I made a promise to give him a gift that couldn't be returned or forgotten. I wasn't just planning a trip. I was creating a memory. A 10-day journey to Lenox, Massachusetts, the hills where he was born. A private rental at a restored 19th century farmhouse with panoramic views of the Berkshires. A tour of the local archives to trace our family roots. And meetings, yes, real sit-downs with distant cousins I found through ancestry threads and handwritten letters. It took months to find them. I spoke with a woman named Judith Ryder, who still lived on the land Dad's grandfather once farmed. She sent me a faded black and white photo of a boy with a toothy grin and confirmed that's your father's uncle. We always wondered where the rest of the family ended up. I imagined Dad holding that photo, standing on that land, realizing he hadn't lost his history, it had just been waiting for him. When I pitched the idea over Thanksgiving dinner, everyone seemed fine with it. Blake gave me a thumbs up between bites of turkey. His wife Sophie said something about the Berkshires being adorable in the fall. Linda even asked what airline I was thinking of using. And Dad, his whole face lit up. "You'd do that for me?" he asked. I nodded. He looked down for a second, then back up with tears in his eyes. "You always remember the things I say in passing," he said. "Even the ones I forget," I said out loud. That night I stayed up till 2 a.m., creating folders, trip budgets, route maps, contact lists. My apartment became a war room of printer paper and sticky notes. Italian phrasebooks were swapped for Massachusetts town ledgers. I learned the difference between colonial revival and Greek revival architecture just to plan which buildings we'd tour. It felt right, until it didn't. The subtle shifts started small. Linda kept forgetting about our trip meetings, booking garden club events instead. Blake stopped responding to my emails about dates and ticket options. Dad would ask excitedly about vineyard tours, only to be interrupted mid-sentence with reminders to take his blood pressure pills or not overdo it at his age. And when I called to confirm the rental one night, the owner told me someone had already emailed them to hold the reservation under review. Someone using my father's name. I never gave her that authority, but Linda had always been good at making things sound official. When I confronted her, she just shrugged. "Don't you think this is a bit much?" she asked. For a man who gets winded after mowing half the lawn, it was always like that, always diminishing, always soft sabotage. But I kept going, because every time I felt the pushback, every time the silence dragged longer than it should, I'd get a text from Dad. "Got my walking shoes ready. Did you know Edith Wharton's estate is a museum now? Can we stop by the general store where I bought my first baseball glove?" Those messages were oxygen. They reminded me why I was doing this. Not for approval, not for praise, but for him. For the man who never forgot my middle school piano recitals. For the man who stayed up until 4 a.m. building a solar system model with me when I forgot the science fair was the next day. For the man who loved quietly but completely. He deserved this, even if no one else thought so. The sabotage didn't come with sirens or slamming doors. It came in whispers, delays, dodged eye contact, and a silence that somehow got louder with every passing week. At first, I chalked it up to busy schedules. Blake had court cases, Sophie had PTA, Linda had her garden club and a new yoga obsession that she mentioned every time I called, as if downward dog could replace direct communication. But then things started to shift in ways I couldn't ignore. Emails about the trip were left unread. Texts about passports or packing lists got one-word answers. And every time I brought up the itinerary on our Sunday calls, the topic somehow floated away, replaced by new recipes, Blake's promotion, or Linda's golf swing. The worst part. My dad barely noticed. He'd ask about the farm rental, and then laugh when Linda said, "We'll see, honey. Jessica's just exploring options," as if it was a suggestion I hadn't already paid thousands to secure. One night I drove 3 hours from Portland to meet them for dinner. I brought printed maps booking confirmations, even a sample menu from the farmhouse's private chef who had promised to recreate recipes from Dad's childhood. Linda met me at the door in pearls and a smirk. "Oh," she said, "I completely forgot you were coming. I invited some ladies from my book club. Maybe we can chat after dessert." We didn't. That night I cried in my car, not because I wasn't heard, but because I was being erased, slowly, strategically. Still, I clung to hope. I told myself Dad wanted this trip, that he wouldn't let anyone take it away. Until the Sunday I overheard the kitchen conversation. It was the kind of moment you don't come back from. I'd stepped into the hallway to take a call from a client. When I returned, I froze just short of the kitchen door. Linda's voice was low-clipped. She's completely taken over his birthday, like it's her job to make all the decisions. Blake's reply came after a pause. It's always been that way. Jess and Dad in their own little world. Like the rest of us, don't matter. I didn't breathe. She's trying to prove something, Linda said. That she's more important than the rest of us. But he needs rest, not a cross-country circus. And then Blake laughed. He actually laughed, and something in me broke. I backed out of the hallway into the guest bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the cold tile floor with my hands over my mouth. It wasn't just disinterest. It wasn't forgetfulness. It was deliberate. They were uninviting me from my own father's life in slow motion. Later that night, I texted Dad. "Can I call you tomorrow? Just want to check something for the trip." His reply came fast. "Can't wait. Want to hear about that cooking class again?" And just like that, hope sparked again. He didn't know. He couldn't. There was no way he would be practicing phrases like cranberry chutney in French if he didn't want this. But the pressure didn't let up. In the days that followed, Linda began forwarding alternative birthday ideas. A lake house barbecue, a cocktail party at the country club. She even emailed me a photo of a sheet cake with golf decorations and the caption, "Low-key and classy." When I didn't reply, she called, "Jessica." She sighed like I was the child. "I know you've put a lot into this idea, but sometimes the best gifts are the ones we don't have to chase across states." "Is that what you think this is?" I asked. "Me chasing something?" I think she said with calculated sweetness that it's okay to admit when something's too much. Too much for whom? Certainly not for my father, who had been collecting photos of Berkshire landmarks and emailing me links to historical sites with the subject line. This one, too, certainly not for me, who had saved for 2 years, rearranged my work schedule, turned down 3 vacations just to make this one happen. And yet every conversation, every gathering, felt like another coordinated maneuver to make me question myself. They began rephrasing things, subtle gaslight-flavored changes. "You're pushing too hard. He's just being polite. You know how he hates making people uncomfortable." Was it possible? They were right. Was I so focused on giving him something special that I hadn't stopped to ask if he actually wanted it? That thought haunted me for about 12 hours, until Dad called me out of the blue and left a voicemail. "Hey kiddo, was reading up on Hancock Shaker Village. Did you know they still have original buildings from the 1800s? Let's add it to the rote." I played that message 5 times. No, he wasn't just being polite. He was excited, genuinely excited, which meant someone close was trying to make me think otherwise. The pressure continued to build. Linda started slipping into more direct language. "This is not what your father needs. He's exhausted already, and the trip hasn't even started. You're making this harder than it has to be." And Blake, he didn't even hide his condescension anymore. "Jess, if you're worried about the deposits, I'm sure we can cover the loss. It doesn't have to be a financial burden." That sentence did something to me. It reduced everything I had built to a price tag. It erased my purpose, my time, my love. It said, "You're making noise. Let us fix it." But I didn't want their fix. I wanted the truth. So I said what I should have said weeks earlier. "Have you even asked him what he wants? Or are you just assuming he's too old for joy?" They didn't answer. Didn't have to, because by then I understood something painful but clear. They weren't just rewriting his birthday. They were rewriting me out of it. Saturday afternoon, early spring. The kind of day that hints at warmth but still carries a chill in the air. I drove past my childhood street with a box of fresh pastries in the passenger seat, flaky lemon danishes from Dad's favorite bakery, a peace offering, a symbol, maybe a small reminder of what this trip was supposed to mean. As I turned onto the block, I noticed the cars first, too many, parked bumper to bumper on both sides of the street. My chest tightened as I passed Aunt Lydia's minivan, then Uncle Matt's rusted Dodge. Even Martin, our cousin from Michigan, was here, his license plate unmistakable. No one had said a word. I parked a block away, walked slow, like I was heading into something holy or haunted. I wasn't sure which. Inside, through the living room windows, I could see them. People laughing, chatting, carrying decorations. Someone was inflating gold balloons. I swallowed hard. My hands were already sweating. I almost turned around. Almost. But something in me refused. I rang the doorbell. Ashley, my cousin, answered with a frozen smile. "Jessica, I didn't know you were coming." Apparently, neither did anyone else. I replied quietly, stepping past her into a house that used to feel like home. The air smelled like vanilla candles and catered appetizers. The banner was massive, stretched across the living room wall. "Happy 60th, Richard," my father's name. My father's face smiling from printed photo centerpieces. My family, without me. Everywhere I looked, relatives, old family friends, even the Haydens from 3 streets over laughing, assembling party favors. Someone was reviewing a printed seating chart. No one looked up, or maybe they did, and quickly looked away. Linda emerged from the kitchen, holding a tray of miniature coffee cups. She froze when she saw me, then slowly she placed the tray down. "Jessica," she said, flat, cold, like I was the wrong person at the right funeral. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice tight. "What is this?" She sighed, not annoyed, not surprised, just irritated. "We're planning your father's birthday, obviously, without me." "That was the decision," she replied, like we were discussing an office memo. A few relatives nearby glanced toward us, then quickly found their phones incredibly interesting. "I need to talk to you," she said, gesturing toward the kitchen. I followed. The clatter of party prep faded behind me. Inside the kitchen looked like a war room menus. Platters, cake samples, stacks of invitation envelopes, RSVP lists, all meticulously organized, every detail planned, every person included, except me. Why wasn't I told I asked? Linda didn't stop rearranging dessert trays. "We didn't think you'd be interested," she said casually. "Given your alternative plans." "My alternative plans?" My voice cracked. "You mean the trip Dad's been dreaming about? The one I've been organizing for 2 years. He's accepted that it's not realistic," she said. "Traveling at his age, jet lag, long walks, heavy suitcases, it's too much." "Did he tell you that?" I asked. Silence. She looked up, eyes sharp, voice sharper. "You always think you know better, Jessica. Always swooping in with your grand gestures. Trying to prove you're the favorite." "This isn't about being the favorite," I said, heat rising in my throat. "It's about giving Dad something meaningful, something he's excited about." "He doesn't need a heritage scavenger hunt," she snapped. "He needs stability, familiarity, people who care about him." "I care about him," I shouted. A beat of silence, then the sound of forks pausing, voices quieting. I lowered my tone. "Where is he?" I asked. "Where's Dad?" Linda hesitated. "Out running errands." I pulled out my phone and dialed. No answer. But then I heard it. The ringtone from somewhere inside the house. I followed the sound toward the hallway. The door to the study was shut. Linda moved quickly to block me. "He forgot his phone," she said too fast. That was it. That was the moment I knew with cold, painful certainty. She was lying. She had lied before. She was lying now. I turned back toward the kitchen, heartbeat thunderous in my chest. "I'm not leaving," I said, voice low. "Not until I talk to him." A ripple of tension moved through the room as I returned to the island and sat down, box of Danishes unopened beside me. 15 minutes passed. Then Blake walked in. He didn't expect me. That much was obvious. "Jess," he said, forcing a smile. "Didn't know you were coming." I stared. "Didn't know," I repeated. "Like you didn't know they were cutting me out of his birthday." "It's not personal," he said quietly, taking a seat. "We just thought it would be easier, less conflict." By erasing me, he exhaled, rubbing his temples. "You always make it about you, like you're the only one who understands him." I never said that, I replied. But I listen, I watch. I know what he wants because I've actually been paying attention. Blake looked at me, then away. "We're trying to do what's best for him." I leaned in. "No, you're trying to do what's easiest for you." Linda appeared in the doorway. "That's enough," she said sharply. "You're ruining everything." And something in me snapped. Years of being overlooked, second-guessed, spoken over. I stood. "I want to know the truth. Why was I excluded? What exactly did I do wrong other than caring too much?" Everyone had gone silent. Relatives stood still. Cups paused midair. No one said a word. Linda's face hardened. Then it dropped. The mask slid away. "You want the truth," she said, her voice a quiet hiss. "We all agreed you're not welcome at your father's birthday party." The words sliced straight through me. Somewhere someone gasped. But what hit harder than her words was the look in her eyes. Satisfaction. Like she'd finally won something she'd been fighting for behind the scenes. And I was just collateral damage. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just looked around that room full of people who said nothing and walked out the front door. Not one person tried to stop me, and that silence, it told me everything I needed to know. My phone rang at 3:17 a.m. The screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen in days, Blake. I stared at it, in the dark, heart pounding, like it already knew something I didn't. I let it go to voicemail. Seconds later, another buzz, a message. I unlocked the screen with shaking hands and hit play. His voice cracked before he even said my name. "Jess, it's me. I need to talk to you. I messed up. God, we all messed up." Silence. Then Mom lied to all of us, to Dad. She told him you didn't want to come to the party, that you refused to be involved. He thought you just walked away. My breath caught. Blake's voice dropped lower, almost broken. "He's devastated. Jess, he had no idea about the trip. I couldn't feel my hands. Or maybe I just didn't want to." I sat in bed, eyes wide open, blanket forgotten. Dad didn't know. All this time, he thought I abandoned him. I replayed the voicemail 3 times. My fingers moved before my thoughts caught up. I unblocked Blake's number, called him back. He picked up on the first ring. "Jess," he asked, cautious, "please don't hang up. Explain." My voice was hoarse, cold, and he did, in painful, crumbling detail. Linda had intercepted emails, deleted text messages, told everyone I had gone off the grid, that I was too overwhelmed with work to help plan anything. She told Dad I refused to participate in any celebration. She told the family I had booked a self-serving, exclusive trip without asking anyone, said I was trying to buy Dad's attention. And the worst part, they believed her. Blake's voice cracked again. "I wanted to believe the best in her. I thought, maybe you were being controlling. You didn't return my texts. I didn't ask enough questions." She played us, Jess. He paused, and now Dad knows. My chest constricted. How I whispered. Blake sighed. "He found one of your brochures in her nightstand for the cooking class. It had your handwriting on it. Day 6, pasta with Maria. Dad will love this." That note, I remembered writing it, smiling while I scribbled it. Now it felt like a lifeline finally discovered. Blake continued. He asked her. She lied again, changed the story twice in the same conversation. Then he checked the bank, saw a huge withdrawal from their joint account money she used for the party. He connected the dots, and he lost it, Blake said softly. He left. He's staying at Uncle Henry's lake house. He doesn't want to see her right now. I closed my eyes, hands trembling. All this time, I thought I was protecting him from their lies. Turns out, he needed protecting from them. What do we do now? I asked. Blake's voice steadied, almost gentle. He wants to see you. When? Today. As soon as you can. I nodded before realizing he couldn't see me. Okay, I whispered. Tell him. I'm coming. And Blake. Yeah, this doesn't fix everything. I know, he said quietly. But maybe it's a start. Yes. I drove to the lake house just after noon. I hadn't been there since college. Dad and I used to come in the summers, build fires, skip stones, eat overcooked hot dogs, and talk about nothing. It had always been our place. Now, as I walked down the wooded path toward the dock, I saw him, sitting at the edge, alone, back hunched, shoulders smaller than I remembered, his favorite blue windbreaker zipped halfway, a worn baseball cap shading his face. He didn't hear me at first, or maybe he did, but didn't know what to say. Dad, I called softly. He turned. His eyes were rimmed red, tired. But when he saw me, something shifted. He stood up slowly, then opened his arms. I ran to him without thinking, and for a long time we just stood there, holding on, letting the wind off the lake carry whatever couldn't be said. I'm so sorry, I whispered. He pulled back just enough to look at me. No, he said, voice rough. I'm sorry. I should have known better. Should have questioned more. You're my daughter. I should have known you'd never abandon me. My throat tightened. I thought you didn't want the trip, I said. I thought you chose them. I thought you chose to walk away, he admitted. And just like that, everything between us. Weeks of confusion, silence, pain broke wide open. We sat on the bench at the dock. I told him everything, the plans, the villa, the family records, the farmhouse chef who'd learned his grandfather's stew recipe. He listened with his head bowed, then looked up, eyes shining. You did all that for me, I nodded. He exhaled slowly. It would have been the greatest gift of my life. I reached into my bag and handed him the printed itinerary. He took it like it was a sacred object. We sat in silence. Then is it too late? He asked. I blinked. What? The trip? Is it too late to go? I smiled through tears. No, I said, it's not too late. We didn't go back to the original plan. The farmhouse was gone. The flights had been canceled. The itinerary scrapped. But the dream. The reason I started this whole thing in the first place, that was still alive. So I built a new plan, a smaller one, quieter, but somehow even more personal. Just me and my dad. A father-daughter trip to reclaim what had been taken not just by Linda, but by years of buried resentment and misdirection. I found a restored cottage in Stockbridge, tucked just off a quiet hill road, with a wraparound porch and creaky old floorboards that felt like a memory. It wasn't fancy, but it was homey, and it was 10 minutes from the land where his grandfather once lived. When we pulled into the gravel driveway, Dad stared at the field across the road. That barn, he whispered. I haven't seen that in 50 years. He didn't say anything else for a while, just stood there, hands in his pockets, eyes misted. Inside, the walls smelled like cedar and thyme. There was no flat-screen TV, no spa tub, just a little kitchen, mismatched mugs, and a view that could calm your bones. Over the next few days, we started piecing the story together. We visited the county records office, where a woman named Eleanor, who had worked there since the late 70s, helped us pull land deeds and handwritten census notes dating back to 1893. We found the signature of Dad's great-grandfather, Samuel Hayes, scrawled in looping ink next to the word farmer. He signed that the day he bought the first 2 acres, Eleanor said. A lot of pride in that. Dad stared at the document like it might shatter in his hands. Later, we walked the old footpath behind the church, where his grandmother used to sell baked goods. It was overgrown now, tangled with wildflowers and pine needles, but his feet seemed to remember. "This used to lead straight to the creek," he murmured. "We'd pick blueberries until our fingers stained purple." On the 4th day, I knocked on the door of a white colonial house with green shutters. I had found the address through a long-shot message board online. Didn't know what to expect. Didn't tell Dad I was trying. An older woman answered, gray hair pulled back in a clip. Clear blue eyes. "Are you Judith Ryder?" I asked. She nodded. "My name's Jessica Hayes. I think we're family." Her eyes widened, then softened. She stepped onto the porch. "You're Richard's girl." And just like that, we were inside flipping through dusty albums, laughing over names like Ephraim and Luetta, passing a faded photo of 2 boys with slingshots standing in front of the very barn we'd driven past. "One of them's your grandpa," Judith said. "The other's my father." They were cousins, closer than brothers. When Dad held that photo, he didn't speak. He just nodded, like something long lost had clicked back into place. That night, over tea and leftover blueberry cobbler, Judith told us about a woman named Annalise, Dad's aunt, his father's only sister. She left town young, Judith said, got married and moved to Ohio. But we always wondered what happened to her. Dad looked up sharply. "Annalise had a daughter, didn't she?" Judith nodded. "Margaret." My hands flew to my laptop. I had seen that name in an old form chain. A woman named Margaret Linton, who posted once years ago about trying to trace her mother's hometown in Massachusetts. I emailed her that night. Didn't expect a response, but the next morning, there it was, subject, "I think you found me." 2 days later, we were driving east to a sleepy town near the Vermont border. Margaret greeted us with a nervous smile and eyes that looked startlingly familiar. "I always knew we had family here," she said. But no one ever answered when I asked. Dad hugged her like he'd known her forever. Turns out she had stories we didn't. Letters, photos, even a recipe card in Annalise's handwriting. Lemon shortbread cookies, the exact kind Dad remembered as a boy. It felt like we weren't just reclaiming our trip. We were reclaiming our people, our history. The next evening, back at the cottage, Dad and I sat on the porch watching the last bit of sun bleed over the hills. He sipped his tea, then looked at me with that quiet steadiness I had missed. "I never expected any of this," he said. "I didn't either," I replied. "But I think it's better this way." He smiled, then laughed softly. "I don't know what we're doing for my 61st birthday," he said, "but it's got a lot to live up to." We both laughed, really laughed for the first time in weeks. And in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't just a trip. This was a resurrection of a family, of a bond, of a truth that refused to be buried. We had started this journey trying to reclaim the past, but what we really found was a future worth protecting. It wasn't until we got back home that everything really sank in. The trip was over, the photos were printed, the bags unpacked, but the silence between certain family members, that part still lingered. Linda didn't call, didn't text, didn't ask how it went. Not that I expected her to. Dad moved into a condo across town a few weeks later. Said the old house felt hollow, like someone had packed up the warmth and left the furniture behind. Blake started stopping by his place on Sundays, sometimes just to drop off groceries, sometimes to sit and say nothing at all. I didn't go back to the idea of forgiveness right away. I wasn't ready. I don't think healing is always about rushing toward peace. Sometimes it's about sitting in the truth long enough to let it settle. But what surprised me most, what truly caught me off guard, was what happened next. Dad invited Margaret, his long-lost cousin, to Thanksgiving. She brought her daughter and homemade cranberry sauce in a chipped blue bowl that looked exactly like one my mom used to own. They laughed like they'd been part of our lives all along, like they weren't strangers who had only just walked back in. And maybe that's the point. Family doesn't always come from the people who share your roof, or even your blood. Sometimes family is the person who shows up at 3 a.m. to say I was wrong. It's the cousin who answers a cold email with a warm heart. It's the father who admits he didn't ask enough questions, then listens with his whole chest when you finally speak. It's the version of yourself that finally stops apologizing for caring too much. I think we spend so much of our lives waiting for people to choose us, to see us, to claim us, to prove that we matter. But sometimes we don't get picked. Sometimes we get erased, ignored, dismissed. And in those moments, we have a choice. We can shrink, we can disappear, or we can build a table somewhere else. Pull up a chair, invite people who want to stay, and remind ourselves that just because we were cut out doesn't mean we weren't worth keeping. Looking back, I don't regret the trip. I don't regret the heartbreak, the confrontation, the messy middle, because it brought me to a version of my father I hadn't seen in years, unguarded, open, present. It reconnected us to a legacy we didn't even know we were missing. It introduced me to people who reminded me that family doesn't have to look one way to be real. And it taught me one of the most grounding truths of my life. You can't control who loves you wrong, but you can choose who you love right. So here's what I know now. Family is created in the moments we show up, especially when it's hard. In the conversations we have when it would be easier to stay silent. In the effort we give without knowing if it'll ever be returned. It's built, not inherited, chosen, not assigned, and it's something I'll never take for granted again. Because once you've fought to reclaim it, once you've looked around the room and realized you belong there, you stop waiting for permission. You start living as if love is something you get to give freely without needing it to be perfect first. And somehow, that's enough. It always was.